Welcome to the 624 Pod, your home for all things independent films. We're going to discuss all the positives and negatives when it comes to independent filmmaking. We're going to have incredible guests from the film industry talk about behind-the-scenes experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, and how the industry has changed in the past 10, 20
minutes.
30, minutes, hours, years. That's the point. It's always changing. And of course, we will always focus on independent filmmaking right here in our state of New Jersey. I'm Tom Baldinger.
And I'm Mark Rigodano.
All right, let's do this. So, Mark, I'm going to now ask you, who's our next guest?
We're in for a treat.
Are we?
This guy's great. He's interviewed everybody on the planet.
Yeah.
He's an awesome stand-up comic. He's also a great actor. And I absolutely love chatting with him. We have John Fugelsang.
John, welcome to the show. Welcome to the 624 podcast. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you both for having me. It's a pleasure to drag you down to my level. Welcome.
Well, I enjoyed working with you, John, on our web series that we shot. We shot 8 episodes called Checked Out, and John played a German customer that comes into the convenience store, and he did it brilliantly. And
he gets verbally attacked by yours truly.
By you, John. Did I send you that episode, by the way? Have you seen
No,
it?
I've never seen it. No, I have never seen
for
it.
a treat. It came
Wow,
out.
I'm a terrible producer.
I mean, maybe you did, and it went to my spam folder like everything else does. But I have no idea.
The thing I loved about when John came on set is when we wrote this, it was completely different in my head of how this thing goes down. And then John came in with a different character than what was in my head when we wrote it. And now I can't think of it the other way.
How did you originally write it? Because all I wanted to do was please you, Mark. That's all I cared about.
Well, you did. You played. So the character's German. He has a German accent, and we kind of were thinking of him as this big, goofy, like cartoony German guy.
Yeah.
And you came in with this.
I had longer hair. I tried to do.
I was going to say you grew your hair out for that.
I tried to be like a diehard villain,
which I was 100% down with. As soon as you did it, I go, yeah, that's exactly how it should be. But like in my head while you're writing, we were talking about this on another episode, when you write and then when an actor brings something to it, it can change everything. And it was like, now this character was almost a little more threatening than it was like being like the jokes were kind of going over his head. You played it so cool. And it goes to show, and I mean, we're not showing the audience, so I feel bad, but when an actor makes a choice, it can change everything and in a positive way. Like, I wouldn't want to go back and do it how it was originally thought of, because you brought something to it that I didn't even see.
And it makes, as a director, it makes the job so much easier as a director, because when you work with professional actors who bring something different than what you wrote or what we envisioned. You wrote that episode specifically, I remember. And you have a professional actor like you, John, who comes in and just does something completely different. And, I sat back going, all right, this is perfect. I don't have to do anything. I just have to call action. Like, I got to watch the two different cameras going at the same time to make sure we're lining up and everybody looks good, because outside of that, that's the joy of working with professional actors in the independent industry, right?
Yeah, it's almost the idea of directing isn't about working with the actors. It's almost casting the right actors. Then you don't have to.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, one of the top rules of auditioning is that make your choice and commit to it. And be ready for adjustments if they ask for one. And I'm someone who loves to get notes. I love when a director tells me to change something. I find that the more parameters you have, the more your creativity can be stimulated. I think a blank canvas is often, it just means more work, but when you impose some guidelines for a character, that gives you a lot of room to work with rather than the whole universe. It's ironic and it seems counterintuitive, but narrow parameters, some kind of limitation always makes me more creative.
When we did Radio Gods, it was the same thing too. You came in and you had the choices made that you made, and it was like it wasn't what I thought when we were writing it, but as soon as you came in and delivered it, it was like that's exactly who that character is. Like he nailed it. Like
I think I was called the Chode in that, wasn't I?
you were
Yes.
you were the chode.
Wait, the what?
The chode. He was a morning radio guy.
I was the Chode. Yeah.
You were the kind of the meaner of the you and Don Jameson duo.
Yes, I've never seen that either. You guys, I love working for you, but you keep the product from me. So this is so healing for me to hear this from you.
I'll send it to you tonight.
I got to call my therapist right now and tell him you guys said this because I've just been racked.
So much has been lifted from me.
So John, so it's funny, both of us are saying, we both directed you, we both worked with you, and you come in with choices. So talk to our audience about, as an actor, the choices that you decide to make prior to coming to set or getting onto a stage. What's that process like for you?
The day you get a script,
Yeah.
what's from day you get the script to the day you show up to shoot?
Yeah.
What do you like to find? How do you go about finding your character?
I mean, I like to read the script 100 times out loud. If I had my way, you would have like a month of table reads for any play or movie. If you bring a cast of actors together for a play and you have 4 weeks of rehearsal, if you make them do table reads for 3 weeks and then block for 1, you'll have it. Because by the time the actors have done it so many times, they know the rhythm, they know the flow, they know the intention, they know what beats work, they know where to take a breath, where to pause.
Right.
And for me, it always comes from not just reading the text, but saying it out loud, which is how you memorize it, but it's also how your body gets used to it and you find the writer's natural rhythms. I mean,
and the words become your own.
They have to. The whole point of it is, how am I going to lie here, and then lie in front of people, pretend to be something I'm not, and tell the truth at the same time. And that's what is so exciting and addicting and sometimes elusive. But you have to know it inside and out. Like, you probably have albums that every note to, every drum line, every bass line, and it's much the same with text. You have to serve the author's vision. That's always got to be goal number 1. But you have to be able to, like with stand-up, where your material in and out, and you know right where you take your breath on stage. And so, I'm really into that. I'm really into a lot of rehearsal, a lot of repetition. I also love improv, and I think improv skills are essential, especially for auditioning, because you have to be able to come in and have you drop all your intentions at the last minute, which is also pretty fun. I did a pilot once for NBC, which was based on a British sitcom, and it was with Paul F. Tompkins and myself and Amy Adams.
Wow.
And Amy Adams was fired, and they replaced her with Tiffany Thiessen. But it took place in a bank, and I was the bank manager. I was very young, but I was cast as the bank manager. So it was very much a straight man role. Paul F. Tompkins was the incompetent lead who kept messing everything up, and I was the boss who would breeze in and be, ignorant to everything and not recognize I had a bumbling idiot in front of me. And it was the hardest thing I ever did because there was no edge to the character at all. He just showed up, looked good, never said anything clever, never said anything interesting. He was always too dumb to notice how incompetent his bank manager was. I went to so many acting coaches in LA on this, and they all said the same thing. I have no idea what to do with this. There's no character.
Oh, man.
Eventually, I had to get to a place where I was just like, well, I don't want to play an attitude, but this man is a feather. This man just glides in and smiles, and he's superficial, and he's raised wealthy, so he's never had to have any consequences for being bad at his job. And he's able to always be pleasant. He can afford massages and yoga, and he's a relaxed guy. And he just comes in and is breezy, and that's it. And it's sort of like how I should have hosted America's Funniest Home Videos, but it was the hardest role I ever had, and it was completely edgeless. This was with NBC and Warner Brothers a few years back. And again, they fired Amy Adams and replaced her with Tiffany Amber Thiessen. But that was like the hardest role I ever had to do. Donald Glover said he called Billy D. Williams for advice on how to play Lando Calrissian.
Mm.
And Billy D only had one piece of advice. He just said, be charming. And normally, I'm very much against just playing an attitude like that.
Mm.
But in that case, it was enough for that character because you don't want it to be just an impression. And in the case of Be Charming, well, there's your intention for every scene. There's your intention for every beat. You have to beguile someone and make them like you, and you will get what you want if you can charm this person. And so you can have a lot of fun with figuring out, what
Yeah.
kind of pain drives that sort of behavior underneath.
Wow. Yeah, that's a way to get deep on a shallow character.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I think Lando was a deep character in Empire Strikes Back, and then by Return of the Jedi, he was a cartoon. So I'm
Right.
like,
There's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah.
It's like you were a young Ted Knight at the bank.
well, I always aspired to be. Oh God, who's the other one? Who was the Ted who was in every sitcom in the 80s and 90s? I already forget. But yeah, it's to me, it's the hardest thing is when you have like a tiny role and you have basically nothing to do and you don't know what to do with it. And that's when you just have to make a really strong choice
Mm.
and seem like you're not acting. You're just in there to solve a problem really fast. I had one scene in this movie, Coyote Ugly,
Mhm.
and I didn't know anything about it. They never sent me a script. I just had this scene where there is this impossibly pretty Australian guy, and I run a club, and his girlfriend's supposed to come play, and she doesn't show up, and so I make him give me his copy of Spider-Man #1.
Oh, I remember that scene.
There was
Yes.
nothing to the character. I knew nothing about him, just that he's angry. He's angry.
Yeah.
And they offered it to me based on my stand-up. They came and saw me at the Laugh Factory in LA and offered me this one scene. I didn't know anything about it. So I was just like, I'm going to lose my job because I have to have an act on this stage.
Mm.
And so it was just easy to just play the desperation and trying to contain the anger. If I'd played it mad at him the whole time, it wouldn't have worked. Instead, I just played it like trying not to get mad at this guy. And it was fine. And then a few months later, I went to the movies and I saw a poster with all these incredibly hot women for a film called Coyote Ugly. And I said to my girlfriend, "Oh, I was in a movie with the same title, but none of these women are in my movie." And then I found out I'm the one guy to have a scene with just the pretty guy in that film.
You're the only guy that didn't get a scene with the hot chick. What the
No, not one.
hell?
So working on independent films, do you feel like you have more of a say? Do you try to work with the directors or the producers or the writers because it's independent and it might be low budget, so they might be more open to collaboration versus larger studios where it's like, here's your script, here's your
Yeah.
job, come in and do it, and you can do all
Honestly,
your homework at home.
yeah, it varies. You have to do all your homework at home. You have to come in there and be ready to hit your mark, have no rehearsal, no conversation, no
Mm.
meeting with anyone. I mean, I've had sets where you just show up and you go to wardrobe and you go to your trailer and nobody talks to you. You don't even meet the other actors.
Mm.
You just have to show up and hit your mark and be ready to deliver. But that's happened in TV as well. You always hope to get a Kubrick who will want to shoot it 100 times and let you play.
Mm.
But I find an independent film that's often even less likely because in independent films, so often there is no money.
Right.
And the rehearsal schedule, I mean, the shooting schedule is often on a tight crunch. So
Yeah.
you'd think, oh, it's low budget indie. I can play around in improv. And very often that's not the case at all. They've got to shoot this thing and move on to the next shot before they lose the light. Since everything's gone to digital video to look like film, it's gotten a lot easier because at least in independent film, it's not a cost issue anymore of wasting feet of film.
Right.
That was a big change. That's probably the biggest change, I think, in independent filmmaking in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But it's no guarantee. And it's funny because I always ask actors when they come on my Sirius XM show about rehearsal for a project and how much they get. And if it's like something based on a play, you might have a shot at it. I mean, watch Denzel Washington's Fences
Mm.
and think about the fact that Denzel Washington and Viola Davis did these roles on stage every night for a couple of months. So they knew it. They could breathe it. It was in their blood, and it shows. It's one of the greatest films of the 21st century, based totally on the writing and the acting.
Are you a fan of? I know you do theater and stuff, but the process of theater, it sounds like that's more of what you're into.
I'm a rehearsal whore. Yeah. I mean, I really am, but
I
I
love it.
also,
Rehearsal whore. That's a good one.
oh, I can't get enough. But I mean, but I also think film is equally collaborative, but in a different way. So I don't have a preference. I love both, but they both exercise very different muscles.
Now, what about the muscle for your Sirius XM show on channel? Was it 127, I believe?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's your rehearsal process for that?
Well, it depends. That show has evolved a lot over the years because we were doing it in the daytime, and then they made me an offer I couldn't refuse to move it to the Progress channel at night, which meant I was moving to a political channel and had to make my show politically centered. It used to be part politics, part everything else. Once it became politics as the forefront, it uses a very different part of your brain, and it requires so much preparation every day because I have to be able to talk at length about every subject in the news and have a point of view, hopefully have a joke or two as a button to get out of something.
Yeah.
And because we get tons of calls and I'm debating and talking to people, and I find it's much harder playing a character that's 100% improv where the character also has your name and looks like you. There's to me a much more dangerous proposition. It's not really safe, and you're all alone. Radio's not a collaborative process. I mean, I have great producers I work with, and you work with the people you're with. I do lots of panels with comedians or have a lot of actors on, but it's amazing how different a discipline it is. And anytime I get to go now and work on a play or a film, it's like summer vacation. That kind of work is so refreshing because it's not having to fill my brain hard drive with all the politics of today and then delete all that and start over again tomorrow. I mean, I'm doing 3 hours a night every night, and sometimes it's politics, sometimes it's comedy. A lot of times it's talking people off a ledge, and a lot of times it's being a therapist for callers in the nighttime hours. So radio it involves so much preparation. I'm not good enough to just go up and wing it. It involves so much preparation, and it involves so much improv at the same time. But that's how I feel about stand-up too.
I was going to say, do you find that you're more exhausted from doing radio than when you're on set, or if you're doing stand-up or you're doing theater?
Mentally, yes. Theater and being on set and stand-up all give me energy. Radio is harder. Radio's harder.
Man,
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And again, radio is different. If I'm in the bomb cellar here doing it, it's one thing. And in New York, we're at night. So a lot of times I do the show from home. All next week, I'll be in LA and I'll do it in Sirius XM studios at a decent hour with a full studio of comics to play with. So that gives you a lot more energy.
Now, when you prep for when you used to do more interview style, that has to be because you don't want to ask the same questions, so you want to like dig a little further or maybe assume things so you can ask questions. Do you find that I don't know what the right wording is. Was that more fun than like, I got to read this newspaper, read that newspaper, come up with the topic?
It's a good question, Mark, because it is a different kind of creative process. Like I learned this when I was very young, and I think one of the first big interviews I ever did at VH1, which was my first broadcasting job, was with George Harrison. I was getting ready to fly overseas to do a special with McCartney, and then they called me up and said, "We need you to delay your trip to London by a day." I said, "Oh, come on, man." And they said, "No, we need you here with George Harrison and Ravi Shankar on Thursday." I was like, "What?" And
Wow.
I worship George Harrison. I loved his solo music. I had every album. I loved his guitar playing. I loved how much his guitar playing and songwriting changed after the Beatles, and his spirituality was of keen interest to me. I grew up Catholic, abnormally Catholic, and once I got away from the church, my spiritual side evolved a lot. So
I grew up Catholic as well, so
yeah, my mother was a nun. My father was a Franciscan brother for 16 years. So I was raised by ex-cult members. Sometimes you find out your parents were married to somebody else before. Mine were both married to the same guy, and it was God, and he got in our house. With George, I knew if I asked about the Beatles, he'd get bored and get up and leave.
Right.
So I talked a lot about God and the soul and meditation
Mm.
and what happens when you die. And in my earpiece, my producer was yelling at me, ask about John Lennon, ask about the Beatles. And I knew if I said the B word, he would
You were
think
done.
I was a Muppet and he'd get bored and he'd leave.
Right.
Because I knew him and I knew he hated talking about the band.
Mm.
So, I mean, this, and how could he not? So instead, I talked about spirituality and meditation. And I kept saying, I can't see how meditation in your garden can give you the same buzz as making music live on stage. I said, as a stand up, I
Mm.
understand how meditation's good. I don't see how it gives you the same high.
Mm.
We were off to the races. And he was
Um,
coming in for like 10 minutes and he wound up staying for 4 hours. And he talked
That's
so much.
great.
And we talked about death, and about the soul. And at one point I handed him a guitar. He hadn't done a concert in America in over 20 years. He played 4 songs that he'd never played live before, including an unreleased song and a Wilbury song Dylan had sung. And he was diagnosed with cancer 2 months later, and it wound up being his last public performance. And
Wow.
the
wow.
day he died, I was up in Montreal doing the comedy festival, and they asked me to fly to New York to host some wraparounds. They said, George is in hospice, and we want to recut the special you did 3 years ago, because when it aired the first time, they cut all the God stuff out. When he got sick, they recut it, had me fly in, and then it was all of the spirituality that they thought no one would care about the first time. So the day he died, VH1 played around the clock George Harrison and this 26-year-old kid talking about God and the soul and what happens when you die. And to
Yeah.
this day, I'll have
Wow.
guys come hug me in airports because they'll say, I never saw anything that spiritual on TV before. And it was all the stuff they wouldn't hear the first time. When the first time
Wow.
William Shatner did my show, I just, how do you talk to Shatner? Like, what hasn't this guy can just do it in his sleep, right? He just shows
Right.
up, plays William Shatner. So I said, with all of these movies that are getting like the Snyder cut, all of these movies that are getting
Right.
another shot, like director's cut, I said, if there's one movie I can think of that deserves a director's cut, I think Paramount should give you some money and a CGI budget to recut Star Trek V.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Now, Star Trek V is the worst Star Trek movie ever made. It's the only movie William Shatner ever directed. It is
He ever directed. That's
reviled,
correct.
and it's terrible. Lawrence Luckinbill plays Spock's brother, and he's amazing in it. But the film itself is really, really bad and really uneven. And there was a strike at the time. There are
times, John, where that movie will come on and I go, all right, I'm going to give it another shot. I'm going to give it another shot.
Oh,
And
it's
it just,
terrible. But there was a strike going on at the time, and they didn't have the special effects they thought they were going to have when he signed on for the movie.
mm,
So Shatner so loves that I took his greatest piece of professional shame and reframed it in a way that allowed him to talk about how its badness wasn't his fault.
mm.
And after
Yeah.
that, he opened up about so much that he told a story about how Leonard Nimoy tried to have an intervention for his wife before she died, and People Magazine ran it. Like, if you can
Wow.
find something for them to talk about, because the more famous the celebrity is, the more they've been asked every question and they're bored and they don't want to be there. But if you can find something to stimulate them, then they'll know you're not a Muppet, and then they'll open up in ways that you never could have imagined. So that's probably the biggest thing I've learned about interviewing.
You have to tell Tom how you got your gig at VH1.
How I got it?
Didn't they see you doing your one-man cabaret
Oh,
show?
yeah. Well, I was doing a show in Greenwich Village, a monthly show at the Duplex, because my day job was running a dorm for NYU.
Okay.
And then at night, I would do this show in the Duplex like a couple times a month. And it was just a 1-hour show with me and some openers where I did monologues and did characters and just stuff I couldn't do in comedy clubs. And, rants and stuff like that. And because I was running a dorm, and they didn't check IDs in the 90s. I was like, what's the lowest I can charge for this? They said $2. I was like, okay, $2 cover. Like, I didn't want to make any money. I wanted to play to a packed house as often as I could. And I had a whole routine about Michael Bolton, because this was the 90s when VH1 was what I called the Michael Bolton Kenny G Liberation Front. It was nothing but this nothing but this guy with the bolts in his neck. Just this monstrosity, and just horrible music. And I took the plot of the video "Missing You Now," which has to be seen to be believed. It is the worst music video and the worst song ever released in America in English. And the whole plot is Michael, his convertible breaks down in some small little town, and the local mechanic tries to help him, and the mechanic has a hot young daughter played by Terry Garr, before she did Desperate
Nice.
Housewives and Superman, and it's so bad, this screeching dirty water song, and the whole time this old mechanic's like, "Hey, my daughter, what she needs is a good roll in the hay with a balding soul singer." And it's excruciatingly turgid. At one point, Kenny G shows up, like as the Christ figure doing a. I mean, so I just did this rant, taking it apart, exploring the use of allegory and Kenny G as a Christ figure, and trashing VH1 for playing it around the clock. And I didn't know, but one night there was a table full of VH1 executives, and
Oh no.
but they were in the process of rebranding the entire channel, and they wanted to get as far away from what it had been as they could.
What you were making fun of.
Yeah, they tried to be music first. They wanted to be like MTV for grown-ups for like 5
Right.
minutes before they realized no one watches music on TV.
Right.
So people like music, they like TV. They don't like music on TV. I mean, we would have these incredible specials with Eric Clapton and Dr. John, and nobody would watch, but a Gallagher rerun would get incredible numbers. So that's why that channel is a wasteland of reality show crap now. But they said, "Hey, we're looking to relaunch our channel. Come be our funny guy." But I wound up being their classic rock nerd. They hired me to tell jokes, but I was the only guy who could talk about classic rock and who knew all these bands and stuff. So it wound up being my broadcasting graduate school.
That's awesome.
It's just amazing because it's what you say about auditioning too. Like you came in, you had a point of view, you stuck to it, and
Yeah.
then who would think like, oh, and VH1 executives see him and go, yeah, let's hire that guy.
Yeah,
That's so awesome.
yeah, it's wacky, but again, it's about making a choice and committing to it and remembering, even in the audition process, if you're totally wrong for it, they'll remember you. I mean, Dustin Hoffman got The Graduate because Mike Nichols had read him for something else and turned him down, but thought, oh, that guy I didn't like then would be perfect for this. Happens all the time.
The whole reason I met my production partner Michelle was I auditioned for her film, and I was completely wrong for it. Everybody who auditioned for this film were these gigantic, muscular, tough Southern guys. Like they looked like they would kick your ass, right behind and I saw the people who were auditioning, and I go, I got to take this in a different direction because I'm not scary and intimidating like those guys. So I made this guy the most flamboyant guy you've ever seen in your life, but the kind of guy that you're like, uh-oh, he might have a knife in his boot.
Yeah, bold choices. I mean, like these casting directors have to watch so many auditions and so much blandness. And if you can find something real, find a real way to connect to them. I did this independent film a few years ago where I played this college professor who seduces his friend's pregnant wife. It's a film about mental illness and this woman who writes a bestseller about being bipolar. And then she gets pregnant and goes off her medication while she's pregnant and begins acting out. And I had to have the scene where like I'm helping her with her golf swing and things wind up happening. And my first time having a sex scene with a pregnant person, a prosthetic, a pregnant belly. And it was so weird at the time.
Oh my gosh.
I felt so creepy by it. I never watched it. Like when it was released, I sent it to my assistant. I'm like, can you watch this and tell me if this is okay? And I finally, after years, just watched it for the first time last week because I'm working on a reel. And it was like, oh my God, I wish I'd watched this back then. I love the work. It totally
Wow.
It was so convincing. Like I so believed myself as this cretinous academic who was doing this to a mentally ill pregnant woman because I knew I could get away with it. And I didn't play it as evil. I played it as nice guy who realizes
the guy from Coyote Ugly.
This is going to happen. Yeah, no, I just played it as a guy who, like many guys, devotes himself to pretending he's better than he is. And and that was it. And as soon as I realized, oh, I can do this, and and at the time it felt really creepy and unpleasant. But watching it a few years removed, I'm like, oh my God, this is perfectly creepy and unpleasant. And I was actually happy with the work.
Real quick, you're working on your reel. Tell us a little bit about the people watching. What's the importance of having a good reel as an actor? What do you look for when you're looking at your scenes? Like, like looking for a monologue is such a big deal when you first become an actor. I got to find a monologue that has a roller coaster ride on it and it goes from this and this. But when you're making a reel, you're trying to take your like greatest hits.
You're becoming a casting director, right? I mean, you're becoming your own director and your own
Well,
casting and your own writer, right?
you're trying to sort of read the minds of a lot of casting directors in advance.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, do I use a lot of clips to show how diverse I am, or do I just use one or two really long full scenes to show my levels and stuff like that? And it's different in every case. And I'm working on simultaneously working on a new acting reel, and a new stand-up reel, and a new hosting reel. And when that's done, I'm going to work on a new reel of me talking about religion, because I have so many clips of that I want to make it its own thing. That's to a book I'm writing. So, it's I can't say. Everyone's got to see what works best. I mean, some people want to show a lot of stuff. Some only want to show one or two. The best advice I can give is to keep your professional reels under 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And if you have that kind of discipline where you have so much good stuff, but it's got to be 3 minutes or less, and if they want to see more, they can ask, then do that, because you know how it is, Mark. You can have like the greatest material in the world that you love, but you find out from the audiences which lines get laughs and which ones don't. And,
right.
When you have exactly 3 minutes, but I have 20 minutes of killer stuff on tape, well, make it the strongest 3 possible, whatever that means to you.
I like watching reels where it's short clips. I like to see, the diversity of you as an actor, right?
Yeah,
that you can play this, you can play that, versus I've seen reels where it's 3 minutes, John and Mark, where it's 2 scenes. And I'm like, I don't need to see your short film. I just want to see what you did best and your diversity. So I like the advice that you're giving there, John.
I think the longer scenes
really
probably lend themselves better to theater work, if you're looking for a theatrical reel, and to show that I can hold my mark for a 10-minute scene and exchange dialogue and do Arthur Miller. So but I prefer to show like, here I am as this, like, my reel has got like, here I am as the scuzzy rock promoter, here I am as the sleazy guy who's seducing the pregnant lady, here I am on Becker, it's the crazy guy. I play the crazy guy on Becker. And
so you're saying your adjective stays the same, it's your noun changes in your roles.
Yeah, that's my own
always sleazy
that comes forward. I played a crazy guy on Becker, and I'm still keeping this in my reel. It's 20 years old, but I'm still doing it. And my whole choice for that was I never blinked. And I never told anyone, but for every time I was on camera, because I'm supposed to be in love with this woman who works in the diner, and I proposed to her after one date, and she thinks I'm crazy, and in the end they find out I really am crazy, but all along I charm everyone, and I played the entire scene at the taping. I never told the director and producers, but I never blinked once on set the entire time, and it really worked. It totally worked.
Again, a choice that you made in your preparation, and that's awesome. I love that. I love hearing that. I love hearing that again, you sat home, did your preparation, you said, this is the choice I'm going to make, and whether they recognize it or not, I know the choice I'm going to make, and it did something.
A lot of actors don't understand that the people on the other side of the camera have way too much shit to think about. So when you show up as an actor, just be fucking good. So then
I can do it. I mean, like, if I had played him as crazy, and like if I had like done a few things, whatever, then it's acting and it's great. What I just tried to do was, this guy makes everyone in the diner love him, and the whole thing is that he's coming on so strong, proposing marriage to this waitress after one date, and in the end you find out he's getting married himself next week. But if you say yes, that wedding's off. And I just did it as charming as possible, but my secret, and you've always want to have a secret you don't tell anyone, and my secret was, I'm not going to blink. And
I love it.
And I smiled, and I played him as sane and charming and wonderful, and he never blinks the whole time. And that was, I mean, Brando said in theater, you have to show the last row what you're thinking. In film, you just have to think it.
I love it. Awesome. That's a good line. We're going to quote you on that. I'm going to use that.
Please quote me on Brando on quoting that.
John Fugelsang said, Marlon Brando said.
Yeah, exactly. Quote.
Brando also said, I'll have more gravy. He said that many times.
I could quote that one.
So, John, so you've got a pay-per-view show coming up.
Well, this is
Tell us a little bit about that.
Can I thank you for letting me do one of these things where I don't have to talk about politics the entire time? This is delightful. I've been doing this tour for a few years now with Stephanie Miller and some other comics. The Sexy Liberal Tour. This is Stephanie's baby, and she and I have been doing this off and on for a decade. And over the years, we've been joined on stage by a lot of. I mean, Margaret Cho has done this tour with us. Daryl Hammond, Aisha Tyler. We're doing and we've been joined. We like every comic comes out and does a panel, and it's straight up liberal political comedy. So that's amazing because in so many parts of the country, you have people who are progressive or liberal or democratic or anti-evil, put it that way. And they were afraid to have an Obama bumper sticker on their car when they went to their job or their church. And so to have a theater with like 2,000 people who all vote the same in red states, the energy is like unlike any rock show I've ever seen. People are just ready to scream and cheer and hear the meanest jokes possible about fascism. And we've been joined on stage over the years by everybody from Congressman Jamie Raskin to Lily Tomlin. Nancy Pelosi has joined us on stage at some of these. A lot of great comics. The show we're doing on Saturday, October 21st, is the only date we're doing all year at the Saban Theater in Beverly Hills. And it's going to be Stephanie Miller, myself, Hal Sparks, and the comedy duo Frangela. And it's sort of going to be a year in politics, a year in review. And then our panel is going to be Glenn Kirshner, the MSNBC legal analyst. Rob Reiner will be with us. He's done the show 5 times in the past, and he's back again, unless the strike ends, because as soon as the strike ends, he's going to shoot Spinal Tap 2. And then joining us will be someone who I asked him, and he said yes. I'm so excited about this. Ron Perlman, Hellboy himself.
Oh, there you go.
Will be the most fearsome guy on the strike line in LA. Will be joining us on stage. It's going to be a big party, lots of great dirty jokes, and for anyone who's ready to laugh at the fascists destroying a once great democracy, you can go to sexyliberal.com. I play the role of Tour. Not sexy or liberal, but sexyliberal.com. And that is Saturday, the 21st. So that's going to be a real party. Those audiences are crazy. And the Saban is a gorgeous theater.
Oh, that's great. Great. Congratulations, man. I can't wait to see that. That's going to
awesome.
be great.
I'll send you my reel.
Yeah. And you know what? you and I both have to send him the stuff that he's done for us so that he can add it to his reel.
Yeah, I'm not going to be doing that, but thank you. Yeah. Of course. Please send me the stuff, please.
And that's the end of the show. No, John, we're going to wrap up here, but we asked this question of all of our guests. Tell us your 3 favorite films. Your top 3. And it's going to be there's going to be a tie. There's always a tie. So, but we're hoping.
I mean, you could just do 5 and be a human. You got to make it 3, really? You could just,
give us 5.
My stock went down with you, didn't it?
No, it's actually no. Because if you had told me this, if you had told me 3, yes, I'd come at you with 5. All right. Wings of Desire by Wim Wenders.
Okay,
would be number 1.
Nice.
City Lights by Chaplin would be number 2.
Nice.
The Empire Strikes Back by Irvin Kershner.
There you go. Empire Strikes Back is a fantastic movie. You and I should. I feel like you and I could nerd out on Star Trek and Star Wars films.
Oh, I really can. I mean, Star Wars more, but Star Trek I'm pretty good at. Star Wars I could teach a college course, and I have a fantastic 11-year-old son who actually knows more Star Wars characters than I do. But 1980 was just an amazing year for beauty, and I mean, you look at like The Empire Strikes Back and The Black Stallion and Raging Bull. Like, it's like the 70s ending and the 80s beginning in the most beautiful of ways cinematically. But Empire Strikes Back is a masterpiece.
It is.
It is. The franchise peaked 43 years ago, and I'm okay with it. It's aged so well. The themes in it are so strong, and I learn more about filmmaking and life and storytelling every time I watch it. It's one of the greatest American movies ever made.
It does. It really is. Now, now we not only, I've always said this to our guests, we're going to have you back, but we definitely have to have you back. And it's going to be the 624 podcast /sci-fi, because we're just going to talk about Star Wars and Star Trek.
Well, my Empire Strikes Back is in a 3-way tie with The Apartment by Billy Wilder. And I think of everything I lost. and I don't know, All About Eve. Or Casablanca. Casablanca's got to be in my top 5, for God's sakes.
Ooh.
There you go. I Tony Dennison, I think, said Casablanca. Didn't he?
Casablanca is as close to perfect as a movie gets. I mean, there's a few movies I think people should watch every 10 years. You know, I think for like sanity in the time of war, I think Gandhi and Born on the 4th of July, those are movies that have kept me sane during crazy times of fascism and war. But just in terms of cinema, acting, screenwriting, Casablanca amazes me. And if you can ever see it on a big screen, you really haven't seen it until you've watched it in theater. It's I don't know why, but it's so true.
It's true.
I love it.
That's awesome. John, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on. We're definitely going to have you back. And also, audience, you can catch John on Sirius XM channel 127, right?
Yes, every night.
Every night.
And we're also a free podcast now. So it's the John Fugelsang podcast, and it's me with like all the celebrities and my opening political rants, and then our guests who are politicians or celebrities. We just had a Christoph Waltz just did our show not long ago.
Oh, wow.
Which was great.
Nice.
Smokey Robinson did it this year as well. And so we get fun people on it.
That's great. No, yeah. So everybody listen in, watch, and thank you so much, John. So Mark, another great show, another great guest. Our show is brought to you by The Roost and Cream Ridge Golf Course. Cream Ridge Golf Course is out in Cream Ridge, New Jersey, owns The Roost restaurant. Great place to go for some food after hitting the links.
Yeah, get a drink.
Watch some live entertainment Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights at The Roost and Cream Ridge, New Jersey Golf Course. Thank you so much, John.
I love what you both do, and it's been a pleasure to work with both of you, and I look forward to more. And I'll come back anytime to just talk movies as a fan, because it's really nice to be able to talk about these subjects and not be talking about Hamas and Donald Trump for 3 hours.
Love it. Thanks so much, John.
Hey, buddy.
Thank you, guys.
We'll see you.
Peace.